Welcome to the Member xCite presentation. This is a chance for members to increase their profile amongst the businesses here and online. It's not a sales pitch, but a 10-minute insight into your field, a business innovation, or interesting area of your life. The concept is to provide great content that's helpful or interesting to the audience, and members are welcome to apply to present an xCite across any of our events, as well as our Facebook Lives, reaching audiences of over 10,000, building your brand credibility, and exponentially growing your business. Ladies and gentlemen, your xCite presenter today is Myles from BBMT Consulting. Myles is going to be talking to us about navigating the COVID-19 data deluge. The spread of COVID-19 has brought numbers, statistics, and charts to the forefront of all of our lives. However, with so much data out there, it's hard to fully digest and make sense of it all. Furthermore, due to the authority of numbers, we are more likely to accept their face value without questioning their veracity. BBMT Consulting's COVID-19 Data Literacy Bites provides clarity in the chaos. Passionate about the delivery of digital transformation projects, Myles' combination of technical and interpersonal skills bridge the gap between the analytics and the decision makers with effective data storytelling. When he's not assisting businesses turn their data into dollars, you can find him sailing on the other side of the world. In the past 10 years, he has completed 113 trips to overseas countries and some countries multiple times. If you count every time he has been in Australia, it is way over 120. That means on average, he has been in more than one country a month for the past 10 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Myles Terry.
Perfect. So thanks everyone for taking the time to listen to me talk for 10 minutes. Usually don't have to ask people too much for this. I usually speak a lot. I mentioned before that, there's studies that show 74% of people feeling overwhelmed or unhappy when working with data. And the problem is, data is everywhere now. Every single time you turn on the phone, the TV, your computer, you're looking at graphs, charts, all this information about COVID-19. Sometimes it's a bit hard to understand it all. So the COVID-19 pandemic has generated an unprecedented amount of interest in data. The irony is this comes at a time when there's so much actually uncertainty around the official statistics. So this is Brendan Murphy, Australia's Chief Medical Officer. He said that a couple of months ago. We believe the true number of cases worldwide is 5 or 10 times higher than reported because we don't know anything about the death rates, the testing rates. Some countries aren't even testing, some countries aren't even detecting. There's just so much uncertainty. And the concern is when agencies share these headline figures, but they don't communicate any uncertainty behind them. So, for example, the Australian government came out in last month, it was reported in April, that 93% of all symptomatic cases of COVID-19 are being detected in Australia. Now, a symptomatic case is where you have COVID-19 and you're showing symptoms of it. Asymptomatic cases where you have COVID-19, but you're not showing any symptoms of it. Now, the problem is global studies estimate that 10 to 60% of all cases don't show any symptoms at all. So let's assume 35%, just halfway in the middle between there. That means for every 100 symptomatic cases, you have 35 asymptomatic cases. So 35 people that don't know they have coronavirus, but actually can be transmitting the disease. Now, if 93% of all symptomatic cases are detected in Australia, assuming everyone that tests positive follows the stay-at-home orders, that means for every 100 symptomatic cases, you actually have 93 people that would be self-isolating at home. You have 7 symptomatic cases in the community, and you have 35 asymptomatic cases in the community. So you might think there's only 7 people out of 100 symptomatic cases that are in the community potentially spreading the virus, but in fact, there could be 42. Now that's a very big difference between 7 and 42. Now, if we go one step further and we have a look at, a state comparison, let's have a look at the ACT. So that 93%, in ACT, they estimate it's actually 85%, which you can see from the dark blue line. So that means for every 100 symptomatic cases, you have 15 symptomatic cases in the community, 35 asymptomatic, so you have 50 total infected people in the community, when the headline figure, you might just think 7. Now, even this 85%, is also an estimate. That comes out of this modeling where they put in all these assumptions, put in all these variables, and it spits out a nice magical number, 85% or 93%. But actually, their modeling, and this is Australian government modeling, suggests that they're 95% confident that this 85% is somewhere in the range of 30% to 100%. And 95% sure of that. So what happens if it is actually 30%, right? So if it's 30%, that means for every 100 symptomatic cases that are reported, you have 70 symptomatic people in the community and 35 asymptomatic people in the community potentially spreading the virus. You have 105 potentially infected people in the community spreading the virus when you might have only put 7 people based on that Australia figure of 93%. So you can see where this can really change people's decisions. If you think that you're going out in public, there's not going to be too much risk involved, then you're probably happy to go out, not socially distanced, not follow the government guidelines. But if you're saying that whatever numbers there are, there's 105 for every 100 infected in the community, people are going to be more and more careful. And to make sure that people can really make these decisions for themselves, this information, this uncertainty needs to be presented to people so they can make that choice themselves. Now, having another look at another example. So these are some graphs that were shown since March. So it shows the number of deaths from different diseases in the world per day worldwide. So everyone seems to think that coronavirus, it only kills 1% of people, or it's not that deadly, or it's just this small bug going around, this invisible killer. Now, back in March, on the 9th of March, there was 56 disease deaths per day. So, if you compare it to the majority of other illnesses, it really doesn't look like it's that big of a deal. But the problem is when you compare daily mortality of COVID-19 at the start of the pandemic to mortalities of other diseases, which have been around for a very long time, these other diseases, we have enough data that we've collected on, we can draw comfortable conclusions. But for COVID-19, we never could. And what happened is as time's gone on, the picture on the right, the one for the 24th of April, this is 6 weeks later, and coronavirus is now one of the deadliest diseases in the world. So what's going to happen another 6 weeks from now or another year from now? It's when you put out, graphs or charts or visualizations that too early or when you don't know all of the information, it can be potentially misleading. Again, if people see the graph on the left, they'll probably say, you know what, I can go out, it doesn't really matter. COVID-19 isn't actually that deadly. But the studies that are coming out now are showing that, COVID-19 is actually 12 to 25 times deadlier than the seasonal flu. So it's not even a comparable measure now, and this is what's happening when people are misinformed in the media, when they don't have when they just get these headline figures and not the actual uncertainty behind them. This can lead to adverse decisions. Now, I really like this one. So this one was released by Donald Trump's White House Council of Economic Advisors last week. So the Council of Economic Advisors, they are tasked with giving Donald Trump advice on the economy. Probably explains a lot about what's going on over there, that this is the image that they put out. What they're trying to say is they're trying to get people to all go back to work in America, restart the economy. Coronavirus, we've peaked, it's all over. What they've done is they've shown projections for the number of deaths per day in America. The black line is what actually happened. Each of the different colored lines, or the dotted lines, each represent a different projection of where deaths are going to go. So this was done on the 5th of May, so a week ago. And so if you see where the black line ends, we're still looking at, about 1,000 to 2,000 deaths per day in America at this time. Now, each of these different colored lines are old projections. They're all old projections based on different dates. One was done in March, one was done in April, one was done in May. And then there was a random red line called a cubic fit put on. Now, a cubic fit is just some random simple Excel formula that they used to show that the deaths could go down to 0 in less than 10 days. So where the red line goes down to 0, which is the 16th, so 4 days from now, they were predicting based on this, that deaths would go down to 0 when there's, thousands of deaths per day still. They use all of these unrealistic assumptions. They use all of these unrealistic visualizations to show a message to the American people on Twitter that, don't worry, we have this under control. Now, you can see the danger here. That imagine you have in a country of 320 million people, the US government's economic council is tweeting out information that says we have the whole virus under control. There's going to be no deaths in 10 days. You can imagine what impact that's going to have on society. And no one's going to show socially distance. There are going to be more protests, more riots, more work's going to open. The virus is going to spread more, and then that graph is going to look nothing like what it looks like there. And it really comes down to, torture the data and it will confess to whatever you want. So people need to realize as well that when you see a visualization, when you see a statistic, when you see a graph, you can make assumptions and you can pretty much make anything happen that you want to happen. You can find evidence in data to support your argument, or you can manipulate the data enough to make it support your argument. So always beware when someone is putting out a visualization that says, this is what's happening, but it may not be realistic compared to some of the real world scenarios. Now, what I want to go with here as well is this is just one nice, clean, easy way to show uncertainty. So everyone always seems to see those straight lines that just show this is the only thing that could happen, when usually that's not the case. A great way to show uncertainty is to have a dotted line which says this is what we're projecting, this is what we think, but this shaded area is everywhere where it could go. So this one's for hospital resource use. So they're projecting the number of ICU beds they'll need based on how many cases there are. And you can see they are quite uncertain around it. But when you see that, you're like, okay, well, that makes, it could go anywhere, but this is where we think it's going. Because when you look at something like this, when they're showing just straight lines, where they say, well, it's definitely going down, it just depends on how fast it's going to go down. And, then you really can potentially be misleading some of your audience. And that's what you got to be careful of. In an age of misinformation, where there's so much information out there, half of it's wrong and half of it's just being shared to promote wild conspiracy theories. It is a difficult time to be flooded with all this information. So what we've done is we've created these data literacy bites on LinkedIn. So for 30 days, we've been posting one piece of information about one type of data on there about COVID-19, so that people can go in, understand a little bit more about it, and then they can actually make their own decisions. It's more crucial now than ever. Better informed decisions equals more lives saved. This is almost a life or death situation for a lot of people in the world. Even if it is 1% of the population or 0.1% of the population, the more that we can restrict movement, or the more that we can physically distance, while making sure that we ensure economy is as strong as possible, healthcare doesn't get overrun. The more information we have, the better decisions that we can make. So what I'll do is I'll post it in the chat. We have on LinkedIn a link where you can go in and look at all of our posts. You can have a look at some of the interesting facts there. And hopefully from this will mean that when this second wave of cases does come, because we know as we open up the economy, there are going to be more cases coming through, people will actually have the ability to read a bit further into the numbers so that they can make those decisions for themselves. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Great presentation. Very, very informative. And it's so true. Like, we're bombarded right now with stats. Like, every time there's a PM address or Brendan Murphy gets up, we're looking at charts and stuff like that. And you're right. You could tell us anything. And when you put statistics or graphs in front of us, we go, oh yeah, that must be correct.
Yeah. And that's the authority of numbers. Just because you see a number, everyone assumes it's correct. Like, in maths class, there's only one right answer to each question. But you just assume that's the case going forward. But, people could I think something like 75% of statistics are made up on the spot these days. So, it really does, it does help a lot to know a bit more about what's going on behind those numbers.
Absolutely. That's a great presentation. So thank you. We do have time for a couple of questions, Myles, and we've got a couple of people with their blue hands up, and that would be Tim Hyde. So Tim's got a question.
I do. Given that Myles is such a data nerd, I'm 12% confident that none of those statistics were made up.
Those were actually all Australian government statistics.
So that's actually sort of all been published on
Yeah,
numbers.
all
I'm a little
been
bit
published
surprised
by
to
the
see
Australian
that was
government.
Non-asymmetric, what is it?
Asymptomatic cases.
Asymptomatic, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Are actually sort of out there in the community when people are thinking they're all okay. So
Yeah.
just because we've opened up a little bit doesn't mean to say you're safe just yet.
I mean, the thing is, it's not so much an issue right now, right? In the ACT, we have 0 cases. New South Wales is pretty much under control now-ish. A few small outbreaks. Victoria, a few small outbreaks as well. But as we open up the economy and as we ease restrictions, these number of cases are going to increase again. You know, Brendan Murphy, the Chief Medical Officer, Scott Morrison, our Prime Minister, they've come out in the news, every press conference, more cases are coming, there will be more peaks, there will be more waves, but they want to just manage it. So we just got to know that if there's 100 cases out there, what does that actually mean? Is there 100 cases out there? Is there not 100 cases out there? And how can, that's how we're going to be able to make better decisions.
Well, I did hear someone the other day say, oh, there's only 8 cases in New South Wales. What's the chance I'm going to get it? And I thought, the problem is there's still a chance. And whether it's 8 cases or it's 800 cases, it's about what you don't know when someone's got it or not. And, as you said, the numbers don't lie.
There was 1 case in China at one point.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And now we have millions of people infected in the world.
Yes. The good news
all came
is, though, I just read a tweet that Donald Trump put out, though, and there's no coronavirus in the US. Unemployment just dropped to 1%. So we're
I hope no one's a Trump supporter here, but I saw something that said, it would be quite ironic that Donald Trump gets taken down by a virus from China named after a beer from Mexico.
I think it's more likely the virus will get taken down, Myles.
So,
we won't go down that line, but he's a funny guy. He's a funny guy. Anyway, I'll probably get one of us will get taken out by the CIA after this. But anyway, thank you very much, Myles. Maria's got a quick question. Go for it, Maria.
That was really funny, Myles. Thank you.
That's all right.
My quick question is, it's to do with research. Like, we're talking about figures and made up on the spot, and Google is the bathroom wall. Yeah. Now, how do you cut through that and make sure that people, to make sure people understand that it's figure is a figure, but it's the research behind it, it's recognizing its source, etc. How do you cut through and get some?
Yeah. So this is a really good question. And so with coronavirus, there's 3 main sources of data. There's the World Health Organization, there's the European CDC, Center for Disease Control, and there's Johns Hopkins University. And if you actually look at and you plot their official numbers, just like cases or deaths, none of them equal each other at any point in time. Because they all use different assumptions, they all use different sources, they have all this different information behind them. The best thing you could do is not to just go to one source and take that as the truth. Go to as many reputable sources as possible. Don't go to Wikipedia for your coronavirus news. Right? Don't go to Twitter. But if you go to Johns Hopkins, World Health Organization, maybe like some the BBC. If you want to do information about America, go to not just one state's news, but a few states' news. You got to get as many sources in together to tell your story, because each source or each piece of information tells you one piece of the puzzle. And by putting them all together, that's where you're going to be able to get those really strong insights.
Yeah. And non-commercial news, I find to be the best source of information. They're not sensationalizing particular stories to get ratings.
Yeah.
SBS, ABC. Excellent. Well, that brings us to the end of the xCite presentation. The perfect example of an xCite. Thank you very much, Myles. Put your hands together for Myles.
Thank you.
Fantastic work.